Welcome to Surviving Bad, where we explore stories of survival, hope, and inspiration. Today we have a guest, Pastor Christian Shields, who's going to share his personal story and give us an inside look at the dark world of pornography. The web has opened up the portals to pornography to a growing number of young children and teens that is scary and dangerous. Let's meet Christian and hear his story. Hello, Christian. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Peter. I appreciate you having me here today.
Tell us a little bit about what you do, now, and why you're here.
Sure. So I'm a pastor, Pastor Christian Life Church, and I've been a pastor working in the ministry since I was about 20 years old. And really what I'm doing as part of my work in the ministry is also what we call Stop the Demand. And Stop the Demand is a kind of a front against human trafficking, especially human sex trafficking, where we say there is a demand for human trafficking. Why? Why is there a demand? Why do people want to pay for this? And I was invited to lead up this Stop the Demand project for an organization called Chains Interrupted, mainly because I'm so open about my story with kind of my addiction to pornography and my battle that I went through. I started looking at porn, and my story's really, Peter, it's not that uncommon. What is uncommon is my openness to talk about it. Mm-hmm. I started looking at porn when I was 11, maybe 10 years old. Me and buddies riding a bike found an old magazine in one of our neighbors' recycle bin that had flipped over, and we looked at it and we giggled. By my 12th birthday, we had found out that we could watch porn on public access at midnight, and we were watching porn every weekend. By the time I was 13, we had internet. My parents tried to put blockers on it, but I was better at computers than they were. And so started looking at porn a lot when we had internet.
And you didn't think this was any kind of a problem at that age,
No,
obviously.
I thought it was fun. I had no idea. And I wasn't a Christian at the time. I had no shame, no guilt about it. And it really started to be, I realized it was a problem when I was 16. By the time I was 16, I had my own personal computer in my room, my own internet connection, as much privacy as I wanted. I was looking at porn like two to three times a day, masturbating 2 to 3 times a day, and that was fine. I didn't care. No, it wasn't hurting anybody. Then I started going to church, and I got saved. I became a Christian.
How did you end up? I mean, this is a big transition from sitting in your room watching porn to going to church. Something had to happen in the middle there somewhere.
So really, there's not some big spiritual, Jesus didn't come down from the clouds and reveal himself to me or anything like that. I had a best friend that we hung out every weekend, and he would spend the night, Friday night and Saturday night, every weekend, and then he stopped spending the night on Saturday nights. I was like, what gives, man? He was like, bro, I started going to church. And I was like, dude, if you're going to church, then I'm going to church. So I started going to church with him.
Oh, is he watching porn with you when he was with you on the weekends?
Yeah, we would do it together. It was just something that kids did.
Okay.
So he started going to church. I started going to church, and the Lord really got a hold of me. I got born again, and started living for him. And instantly, I was able to start moving away from kind of what Christians would call sin. Lying, stealing, cheating, all of these things that I was doing. I was a habitual liar, had all of these issues, and just was able to move away from them very quickly, really straighten up my life, got away from bad influences in life, got away from friends and alcohol and all of these things, had no problem.
Now, one of these things, I don't hear anything about your parents through all this.
Well, so My mom and dad were divorced when I was like 4. And I might have even been younger than that. I don't ever remember them being married. We moved across the country, raised by a single mom. She was always working hard to take care of us, but just wasn't as present as maybe other parents were. But also, my mom was a great mom. I don't think that she ever thought that pornography could be an issue.
How did she feel about you finding Christ?
Well, I mean, she was a Christian and just kind of had moved away from Jesus for a while. And when she got divorced, my dad really went deep into the faith, and my mom kind of went away from it for a while. So she didn't care. I had thought that I was a Christian before. I'd said, I believe or whatever. I believe in God because that's what my family does. But it was never real for me. In fact, later on, I ended up praying for her and her husband, my stepdad, to start coming to church, and they did, and they got replugged back in. But all of the dirty stuff in my life, I was really good at keeping it secret.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And on that note, we'll stop and take a quick break. We'll be back. When we return, we'll talk about Pastor Christian's work and its impact on things like human trafficking, a critical problem in Iowa. You don't want to miss this.
Many teenagers don't understand the dangers and effects of marijuana use. Now it's time for Just the Facts, ma'am. An IQ is a score determined from standardized tests to determine intelligence. An IQ of 100 puts the average person in the 50th percentile of intelligence. Regular marijuana use during teenage years can cause a long-term 8-point drop in IQ. A loss of 8 IQ points drops them to the 29th percentile. For more information, go to drugfreeiowa.org.
After Kylie used coke, she stopped caring about school, friends, or who she had to steal from to get more of it. The story of addiction is all too familiar, but you can change it.
Sleeping in, Dad?
If you or someone you know is in recovery from addiction, share your story with the partnership at drugfree.org, because your story can change someone else's.
Hi, I'm Carnell. If you're like me, you spend a lot of time online, streaming shows, downloading files, and Skyping with family. That's why Mediacom recently boosted many of our internet speeds at no extra cost. We call it Always Faster Internet because we're always improving to meet your needs. And when you combine improved speeds with hassle-free Wi-Fi, you get super fast speeds all over the house. So more gets done even faster. The power to make a good thing even better, the power to simplify.
Welcome back. We're joined by Pastor Christian, a survivor who has chosen to make a difference by standing up to the terrible influence of pornography in the health and welfare of Iowa children. Now, we're waiting to hear you finish your story.
So this is the big thing. This was the big reveal for me in my life when I realized how dark porn was. So I'm 16, I'm saved, I'm getting my life on track, things are going great, and I begin to hate porn. Just detest it. I know that it's wrong. I know it's not something that I want. It's not something that Jesus wants for me. It's this dark secret, and I can't stop. And that's when I really, when I say I can't stop, I mean I can't stop. I would cry, I would weep, I would rip up my computer, I would do whatever I could. I read books, I went to seminars, I had people pray and pray and pray. I got all the advice in the world, but dude, I couldn't stop. Nothing I did would make it go away.
Like addiction.
It was 100% addiction. It was such a bad addiction that if I would go on a plane ride, like if I got on a plane and I had to be in a plane for 6 hours, I couldn't go the 6 hours without going and looking at some sort of porn and relieving myself. And so I'd go to the bathroom in the plane and do it just like a druggie. And man, I fought so hard and I read so many books. And I just got tired and exhausted, and I thought there was nothing that I could do to stop it. Really, what really frustrated me was every time I would listen to someone talk about porn, it would always seem to be like a sweet grandmother or a PSA mom or some pastor who was so holier than I was ever going to be, and he was just talking down to me. And it just made me shell up. It just made me hide and just pretend like it wasn't an addiction. I got married. People told me once you get married and you can have the real thing, it won't be a problem. It wasn't true. It made it worse. I began lying to my wife. You know, she'd want to be intimate with me, and I'm the one saying I've got the headache because I'd rather look at porn than be intimate with a real human being because, I mean, sex is work and porn is easy. And the addiction, like my wife will always be my wife, but porn can be whatever I want it to be. I can look at whatever I want. I can have whatever kind of fantasy that I want.
Now let me ask you a question, because I hear the statistics about the number of young teens and adults supposedly addicted to porn, I presume having similar experiences as you. Is this something that's a reality? Do you know what these numbers are in terms of the people that do this?
Yeah, so once I started doing Stop the Demand, once I started saying, okay, I'm gonna make a difference, I'm gonna fight, I started looking into these numbers, and they're staggering. So just to drop some statistics on you, 85% of men, and when I say men, I mean 14 to about 40 years old, 85% of the 14 to 40-year-old men demographic, teenage boys and men, 85% look at porn twice a month. That's who admit it, who've been surveyed. You go to the baby boomer generation, and it's about 50% who admit it. For women to the 14 to 40 demographic, you're at about 48%, just about half that look at porn.
48% of women?
Of women who are looking at porn twice a month, every month, at least, at the very, very minimum. Something like 98% or 97% of boys in America will look at porn before they're 18 years old. A large number, I don't remember the exact statistics, but a large number of teenage boys between the ages of 12 and 14 said they've looked at porn more times than they can count. And now that I do what I do, I see it. I see it on people's faces. I see it in the conversations. I hear the wives talking to me and saying, well, my husband doesn't have this problem because X, Y, and Z. And their X, Y, and Z is the exact X, Y, and Z that I would tell my wife why I didn't have the problem.
Oh, wow.
And my heart would just begin to break. Peter, I believe it's an epidemic. I really do. Some states, I believe it's 11 states in the United States, have classified porn addiction as a public health crisis. We've tried to get Iowa to classify it as that, but they shot the bill down. Unfortunately, we're still fighting for that.
Well, we've had people talk about human trafficking on the show.
Yep.
And that's exactly the way they talk about it, that it's so rife. It's in so many communities that it's scary to them.
It's $14 billion is the revenue in America that human trafficking produces. Human sex trafficking produces $14 billion. That's more than Microsoft sells Xboxes. And that's crazy. This is something underground. This is something hidden. There's no marketing for it, but there's $14 billion a year going to sex trafficking.
And this porn that you're talking about is a critical part of that?
I believe it is. I believe you have to ask. If there are $14 billion worth of dollars willing to go to something, what's the cause? Why is there a demand?
That is a great point. We'll get back to it after the break. When we come back, we're going to talk more about the numbers when it comes to pornography in Iowa. And they are scary. Stay with us. You don't want to miss this.
You may have heard about synthetic drugs in the news and the fact that more Iowa teenagers who use them are ending up in the hospital. Synthetic drugs can be dangerous, but you can help prevent the threat. Learn about synthetic drugs and talk with your kids now. For sale does not mean safe to use.
Get help at drugfreeiowa.org.
Thousands of businesses have switched to Mediacom Business for fast and reliable internet, unlimited nationwide calling, and popular TV channels with sports package upgrades. And now, with our new business mobile data, they stay connected on the go. Mediacom Business is the simple and easy way for businesses to get all their telecommunications services from one provider, all for just $99.95 a month. Get a free mobile hotspot device with all 4 services. Mediacom Business. How can we help you?
So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice. And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
We couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. I'm Peter Komendowski, and our guest today is Pastor Christian Shields, and he is sharing some of the staggering numbers when it comes to people in pornography in Iowa. Christian, it's shocking.
It really is. You were asking me before the break about some of the numbers, and what I was telling you is, dude, not only is it $14 billion of revenue they're bringing in, it's 1 in 5 men in America who are paying for sex, from sex-trafficked women, 1 in 5 men. And these aren't, when we think of the kind of guy who would pay for a woman, generally we have these stereotype images in our head. The guys who are paying for sex, the vast majority of them are married and have graduate degrees, because they're the ones with money. They're the ones who have the ability to pay for this. It's staggering.
Now, excuse me for being naive, but is it that easy to find sex that you can pay for?
I mean, I don't want to tell you how to do it, but yeah. As a pastor, this is a unique thing about being a young male pastor who's open about my past, who's open about my problems. I get a lot of guys, a lot of young men who come to me and open up. It's incredibly easy to find a woman to pay. It's shocking. When I first moved to Cedar Rapids, I met a guy who had just gotten out of prison, and he was giving his life to the Lord. He said, "Let me show you around." And he started showing me and pointing out the houses that prostitutes work at, that sex-trafficked women are being trafficked out of. Dude, it's crazy. It really is. I never knew this as a porn addict. Now, I never knew how easy it was to pay for sex. My plan, once my addiction got worse, was to go to Nevada and to pay for a prostitute. You asked a really good question. You asked, what does porn have to do with this? You said, is there a link there? 270%. That's your percent chance increase. You are 270% more likely to hire a sex traffic victim for sex if you look at porn. 270% more likely if you're addicted to pornography. That's why we say if we can do something about this, if we can do something about porn addiction, we might be able to slow down the demand for sex trafficking.
Now, I have met with religious leaders in Iowa, and I think even on a very private level, many have admitted that they fear pornography is one of the things that is one of the most debilitating in their parishes.
Yeah.
And they're not openly talking about it like you are or your church. Now, this has really got to make it hard to deal with a problem if it's being kept that secret and that dark.
That's the biggest problem. It's hidden. I think it's hidden because everybody's doing it. Everyone's doing it, so no one wants to talk about it. You talk about religious leaders, and I'm a religious leader, and I don't want to talk bad about any religious leaders, but the statistic is 50% of American pastors are watching porn, and admitting to watching porn. Again, that twice a month number is the number we look at where we start looking at addiction. 50% of American pastors who hate it. They despise it, but they're addicted. It's this problem. The way that I always tell people about it when we're talking about addiction, and I'm talking about like my mom. You asked about my mom earlier. My mom did a great job of teaching me about drugs and teaching me about tobacco when I was young. When I was a 10-year-old, I knew drugs were bad. I knew smoking was bad because she talked about it. She told me about it. I was offered a cigarette at 11 years old, and I was like, ooh, get away from me, you're icky. If she would have taken the time to talk to me about pornography like she talked to me about tobacco, then when I saw that magazine for the first time, I would have said, ooh, that's icky, get it away from me. When my friend said, let's turn on public access, I would have said, ooh, that's icky, I don't want to watch naked people, that's gross. The bad people are the ones who film that. If I would have had that conversation with my mom, if she would have talked to me about that, I would have never been addicted. And I don't blame my mom for my addiction in any means, but I realize as a parent now of 2 young kids, we're going to talk about these things at a young age because they're going to come upon it. And I want them to know from me before they know from the internet what's going on.
When you share those numbers, the 50% of baby boomers, 70% was it of millennials? 80% of millennials?
85%.
This reminds me of that problem of parents growing up that smoked pot when they were in college, trying to tell their kids not to do it. I mean,
right.
How do you start a dialogue when you have a culture that's so engrossed in this problem?
The first thing we have to do is we have to start treating it like an addiction. And that's really the big thing. We've got to treat it like an addiction. If someone came to me in my church and they said, hey, I've got a cocaine addiction, I'm not going to tell them, well, let's pray about it and just stop. But that's what we do with porn.
Well, this is a great point. Let's take a short break and come back and share some of these ideas with our viewers. We're going to invite Christian back to share his ideas and advice he feels can help you better understand the challenge of pornography and maybe help someone you love. See you after the break. Children see magic in the world around them, and parents see the dangers.
There is hope for the future if we face it together.
Find out more about how you can protect your children from the risks of illegal drugs, prescription medications, and alcohol.
Go to drugfreeiowa.org.
I'm Quinn. At Mediacom, we believe customer service should be as simple as possible. So simple, in fact, you don't even have to dial a phone. All you need is our mobile care app, and you can request a call from a customer service agent, manage appointments, check for neighborhood outages, look up account info, and even reset equipment. And the best part, the mobile care app is absolutely free. The power to connect, right at your fingertips. The power to simplify.
You wouldn't walk through the halls of your school naked, yet without thinking, many teens sext explicit photos of themselves to friends using cell phones, never thinking it'll go further. But once you hit send, you're exposed. You're out there in cyberspace for everyone to see. Sexting, it's dumb, it's dangerous, and it's against the law.
Watching your sister go through withdrawal is the last thing you expect to do. You hope she gets past it, but worry she'll relapse. The story of addiction is all too familiar, but you can change it.
That's 2 out of 3.
If you or someone you know is in recovery from addiction, share your story with the partnership at drugfree.org, because your story can change someone else's.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad, and one of my favorite parts of the show where we invite our guests to share some insights and advice with us. Pay close attention. It could make a difference in your life and the life of someone you love. Christian, welcome back.
Thank you.
You were starting to talk about what it was like, what it's like, this dealing with this addiction, and how to be able to help people dealing with the problem.
So, 2 fronts that I think we can touch on today. One is if you have a problem. 2 is if you have children. If you have a problem, let me tell you what helped me. Getting in a group of people who all say, I've got a problem and I want to stop it. I want to fix it. I got with a group of 3 other guys. We all admitted that we had a porn addiction and we wanted to stop it. We went through a series called Conquerors, which is about pornography, and it treats it as a chemical addiction.
Let me ask you, Christian, I'm interrupting you. So that means we have to look at porn as a bad thing.
We have
There
to.
is no way to excuse it as something normal or a rite of passage or anything else.
I really don't think that we can. We did that with tobacco for a long time, and eventually activists started standing up and saying this is a bad thing, and we're able to break it down. That's what we're trying to do with porn too. When we look at where porn leads, because it's an escalating addiction and I don't have time to go into the dopamine levels and the pathways, but just in short, an escalating addiction means you need more and more and more to get the same level of dopamine's release, to get the same high. Because it's an escalating addiction, it almost never stops at porn. It leads to,
and that makes it important,
sex trafficking. It leads to adultery. It leads to broken families. So I got together with a group of guys who were all able to admit it, to look at it as an addiction. It was like an AA group. I've got a sobriety counter on my phone that shows how long I've been sober from pornography. You just have to be honest. You just have to be honest with people. I'm happy to help anyone get in a part of one of these accountability groups, but you need other guys who are going through it. You can't talk to the PSA mom. You can't talk to the pastor who's never seen it before. You've got to talk to someone who's been there. And I'm sure anyone in AA would tell you the same thing. Anyone in Narcotics Anonymous would tell you the same thing. You need someone who knows.
What about children then? What do you do?
Here's the thing. This is the biggest thing. If you really think porn's a problem, if you're a mother and you're watching this show and you're like, what do I do to stop my kid from watching porn? Be smart. Porn is on the internet. That's the #1 place we're getting porn. It's the #1 porn site in America has 6 times more traffic than Hulu does. It's on the internet. That's where you get it from. If you're a mother, if you're a father, and you want to get your kids, you want to keep your kids safe, talk to them. Talk to them in terms they can understand. And also, don't give them smartphones. Don't give them tablets. Privacy is great. Digital privacy will ruin lives. I wish my mom never let me use a computer in the privacy of my own room. Looking back, I would have hated her for it, but now I would have loved her for it. You've got to just stop and say, you know what? This is a gateway to drugs. Porn is a new drug, and I'm not going to let my son walk around or my daughter walk around with a cell phone in which they can look at pornography on the internet, or they can make pornography of themselves and send it to each other by illegally sexting. You just have to make extreme decisions. You wouldn't let your kid walk around with a pack of cigarettes? Don't let him walk around with a cell phone.
Thank you very much. These are great points, and I appreciate you being on the show. And thank you for joining us today. Keep your eye on Mediacom MC22 for our next episode, where we explore Iowa stories of survival, hope, and inspiration. Only on Mediacom MC22, your local programming leader.